On a freezing night, a grieving billionaire brought a birthday cake to an empty park bench for a daughter who never came home. When a forgotten 6-year-old asked to celebrate with him, one quiet question ignited misunderstandings, a courtroom test of truth, and a fragile hope that would redefine what family truly means. Winter settled over Bayshore City like a held breath. The lake nearby whispered under thin ice, and the wind carried a sharp metallic cold that crept beneath coats and into memory. Harbor Light Park was nearly empty at night, its paths washed in pale light from flickering street lamps. On bench 7, Graham Vale, 38, sat perfectly still. He wore a dark wool coat, tailored expensive and entirely useless, against the weight pressing on his chest. Beside him rested a small white box. Inside it, untouched, was a strawberry cake, simple, round, carefully chosen. A single pink candle lay across the lid, unlit. Graham checked his watch. 9:12 p.m. That had always been Poppy's favorite moment. The hour she used to clap her hands and laugh, shouting for him to hurry before the candle melted. Tonight, the laughter existed only in his head. Poppy would have been 5. He didn't open the box. He didn't light the candle. He sat there breathing slowly, as if one wrong breath might fracture what little control he had left. Cars passed far away. Somewhere a train horn echoed low and lonely. Graham came to this bench only tonight. This was where he used to bring Poppy after dinner. She said bench 7 was lucky. He used to believe her. Behind the bench near the edge of the small playground, a quiet figure paused. A child. She stood half hidden by a bare tree wrapped in an oversized jacket that swallowed her frame. She didn't run. She didn't call out. She simply watched the man and the cake with careful, curious eyes. From a distance, she noticed something strange. The cake wasn't being eaten, and the candle, small and pink, was still untouched. The little girl took one step forward, then stopped. She had learned to move carefully in the world. Not because anyone told her to, but because being careful made things quieter. Her boots were worn at the edges, her sleeves too long, her blonde hair tangled by the wind. She hugged her arms around herself, not dramatically, just enough to stay warm. The man on the bench hadn't noticed her yet. She watched him stare ahead, eyes fixed on something that wasn't there. He looked important, his coat, his posture, the stillness of someone used to control. But he also looked broken in a way she recognized without knowing why. Her stomach growled softly. She ignored it. What caught her attention was the candle. She had seen candles like that once behind a bakery window. They meant birthdays. She swallowed and counted her breaths. 1, 2, 3. If not now, she whispered to herself, then never. Her voice came out small but steady. Excuse me, sir." The wind almost stole her words, but this time the man turned. Up close, his face was tired, kind, and sharp around the edges like glass worn thin. He looked startled, not angry. "Yes," he asked quietly. She twisted the cuff of her sleeve. "Is it your birthday?" Something shifted in his expression. He shook his head once. "No." She nodded as if that answer fit into a picture only she could see. Her eyes flicked back to the cake. Then she asked the question that would change everything. "Can I celebrate with you anyway?" The words hung between them, fragile and brave. Graham swallowed. "It's my daughter's birthday," he said. "She's not here." The girl lowered her gaze for a moment, then looked back up. "At least," she said softly, "someone remembers." Silence settled again, but it felt different now. Graham looked at the child standing in front of him, too thin for the cold, too polite for the situation. She wasn't asking for the cake. She wasn't asking for anything. She had already said her piece and was ready to disappear if needed. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ren," she replied. "I'm 6. 6. The number landed in his chest heavier than he expected. Poppy had been 4 when she learned words no child should know. 5 was a future that never came. Graham shifted slightly on the bench. Would you like to sit? Wren hesitated, then nodded. She climbed up carefully, feet dangling, not quite touching the ground. She kept her hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the cake box, like it might vanish if she looked too hard. Graham opened it. The soft scent of strawberries rose into the cold night. He lit the candle. The flame trembled, then steadied, glowing gently between them. Wren didn't reach for the cake. You don't have to wait, Graham said. I know, she replied. I like looking first. He cut a small slice and placed it on a napkin, handing it to her slowly. Their fingers brushed hers were cold. She took one careful bite. Her eyes widened. It's sweet, she whispered. Then, searching for the right words, she added, like, safe sweet. Graham felt his throat tighten. The candle flickered softly as snow began to fall, and on bench 7, grief and hope sat side by side for the first time in a very long while. Snow began to fall in small, uncertain flakes, melting the moment they touched the ground. Wren watched them quietly, her legs swinging just above the frozen path. She didn't ask for another bite. She didn't rush. She had learned that good things lasted longer when you didn't ask too much of them. Graham noticed. Do you have someone waiting for you tonight? He asked gently. Wren's shoulders lifted, then lowered. My mom, she said. After a pause, she added, and Caleb. She didn't explain who Caleb was. She didn't have to. The way her voice flattened around the name said enough. It's late, Graham said carefully. Do they know where you are? Wren shook her head. Not quickly, not guiltily, just honestly. I was supposed to come straight back, she said, but the park is quiet, and quiet helps when people are tired. Graham didn't press her. He listened. Wren spoke in pieces, like someone laying down rules she followed every day. I try not to be loud. I help with the baby. If I'm slow, I say sorry first. She stared at the candle as she talked, her voice calm, almost instructional. When people are busy, birthdays don't matter much. It's okay. The words landed harder than any accusation. Graham felt a familiar ache, one he recognized from hospital hallways and sleepless nights. This wasn't danger screaming for attention. This was quiet need learned over time. He glanced around the park. Empty benches, long shadows, falling snow. You shouldn't be out here alone this late, he said. I know, Wren replied quickly, then softer, but I didn't want to make things harder. Graham closed the cake box. Something settled in his chest. This wasn't a night for ignoring responsibility. Graham stood slowly, making sure not to startle her. Wren, he said, I want to make sure you're safe. That means doing this the right way. She looked up at him, alert now. Adults didn't usually explain what they were doing. There's a diner nearby, he continued. It's warm and public. We can eat something, then I'll call a helpline so an adult can figure out the best next step with us. You won't be in trouble. Wren searched his face, not for charm, not for promises, but for consistency. Just dinner, she asked. Just dinner, Graham confirmed. And help. She nodded once. They walked side by side through the park, staying under the streetlights. Graham kept his pace slow, visible. He texted quietly as they walked, documenting the time and location. Not to protect himself, but because children deserved adults who took rules seriously. The diner glowed ahead of them, neon buzzing against the snow. Inside, warmth wrapped around Wren like a blanket she hadn't expected. She slid into a booth, hands folded, waiting. Graham ordered simply soup, grilled cheese, hot chocolate. No excess. No spectacle. When the food arrived, Wren stared at it like it might disappear. She took a spoonful of soup and sighed just a little. This is nice, she said. It's quiet. Graham smiled. My daughter liked diners, he said. She said they felt like movies. Wren tilted her head. Did she sit like this? She tucked her legs beneath her. Exactly like that. For a moment, the world held still. Then Graham excused himself briefly and stepped aside to make the call, calmly, clearly asking for guidance. Wren watched from the booth, realizing something new. Some adults didn't rush away from responsibility. The call was short, professional, and calm. Graham returned to the booth and sat down, keeping his voice level. "I spoke to someone whose job is to help families," he told Wren. "They said we should stay here until they arrange the safest plan. That way no one guesses. Everything is clear." Wren nodded slowly. "Okay." She dipped her sandwich into the soup, more relaxed now. Her shoulders softened. She drank the hot chocolate, carefully blowing on it the way children do when they want to enjoy something without losing it. Snow thickened outside the window. "You did a good thing," Graham said. "You asked instead of wandering." Wren looked puzzled. "I didn't know where else to go." "That's why asking mattered," he replied. After dinner, a community liaison arrived, kind, unhurried, wearing a city badge and a warm smile. She spoke to Wren at eye level, explaining every step. No surprises. No scary words. Wren listened closely. The plan was simple and lawful, a temporary supervised place to stay for the night, while they contacted her mother and arranged a proper handoff in the morning. Wren glanced at Graham. "Will you forget tonight?" she asked. Graham met her gaze. "No," he said. "I don't forget children who trust me." Outside, snow covered the footprints in the park. Bench 7 disappeared under white, but what began there didn't vanish. It moved forward carefully, legally, and with hope. The city didn't sleep that night. Snow kept falling soft and steady, covering sidewalks, cars, and the quiet mistakes people made when no one was watching. Inside the small, warmly lit office where Wren waited with the community liaison, everything felt unreal, too calm for something that would soon ripple outward. Wren sat on a chair that was a little too tall, feet swinging gently. She held a paper cup of warm milk with both hands, listening as the adults spoke in careful, respectful tones. "No one is in trouble," the liaison said again, kindly. "We just want everyone safe." Wren nodded. She believed her. Across town, Tessa Harper stood in her apartment kitchen, staring at the clock. The baby had finally fallen asleep. The quiet felt wrong. Too empty. "Wren," she called. No answer. At first, Tessa told herself her daughter had gone downstairs, or to the park like she sometimes did when things felt loud. But minutes stretched. Then fear crept in, not dramatic fear, but the cold kind that settled deep. She called Wren's name again. Louder this time. Still nothing. Caleb leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "She wanders," he said flatly. "Always has." That word "wanders" landed sharply. Tessa grabbed her phone and dialed, straight to voicemail. Her chest tightened. She didn't cry. She moved. Jacket, keys, hallway. By the time she reached the police station, fear had already begun changing shape. It turned into urgency, then into something sharper. "My daughter is missing," Tessa said, voice trembling just enough to be honest. Questions followed. Times, places, the park, the bench. By morning, security footage was reviewed. A well-dressed man, a black sedan, a diner receipt, a name surfaced, Graham Vale. And just like that, a quiet night filled with good intentions began to echo far beyond Bench 7. Graham didn't wake to panic. He woke to his phone vibrating on the nightstand, the screen glowing in the dim room. A message from Serena Pike appeared first. "We need to talk. Now." Minutes later, another notification followed. Then another. He sat up, already sensing the shift. Serena's voice was calm when she called, but precise in a way that meant urgency. "There's a report," she said. "A misunderstanding. It's gaining attention faster than it should." Wren Graham asked immediately. "She's safe," Serena replied. "With a temporary guardian. That part is clear. But the story is moving ahead of the facts." Graham opened a news app. Tech exec questioned in child incident at City Park. The words felt heavier than they looked. He read carefully. The article didn't accuse him outright. It didn't need to. It asked questions. It hinted. It let assumptions do the work. Graham closed the app. I documented everything he said. The call, the diner, the guidance. And that's exactly why we're okay, Serena answered. But perception moves faster than truth. We'll meet the facts with patience. At the temporary care center, Wren sat with a social worker who let her draw while they talked. She chose a blue crayon and drew a bench under a streetlight. Two small figures sat side by side. One held a candle. Do you want to add names? The social worker asked gently. Wren shook her head. I know who they are. Back at the station, Tessa stared at the same headline on a screen across the room. Her stomach twisted, not with anger, but with confusion. That's him, Caleb said sharply. I told you. Rich guys don't just help. Tessa didn't answer. She was remembering Wren's face, her quietness, the way she never complained. Somewhere between the facts and the fear, a line was being drawn, and everyone was stepping closer to it. The courthouse smelled like polish and old paper. Wren sat between a guardian and a social worker, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her shoes didn't reach the floor. She didn't swing her legs today. Across the room, Graham stood beside Serena wearing a navy suit that felt heavier than any winter coat. He didn't look at the cameras. He didn't look at the crowd. His eyes found Wren's first. She saw him. Relief flickered, small but real. Tessa sat on the opposite side, shoulders, tight eyes rimmed red. Caleb leaned back in his chair, jaw set, as if the room itself had offended him. When Judge Eliana Hart entered the room, Rose. Her voice was even steady. This court will address concerns regarding a minor's temporary placement and welfare. We are here for clarity, not spectacle. Serena spoke first, presenting timelines, call records, and guidance logs. No dramatics, just order. Graham stood when asked and spoke plainly. I followed professional guidance. My only intention was to ensure a child was safe and warm. The judge nodded. Then she turned to Wren. You may speak if you wish, Judge Hart said gently. Only in your own words. Wren took a breath. She didn't look at Caleb. She didn't look at the cameras. She looked at the judge. I wasn't taken, she said quietly. I asked. A murmur passed through the room. I was cold, Wren continued, and he waited for my answer. Silence followed, not empty silence, but listening silence. Judge Hart leaned back slightly. Thank you, she said. That was very clear. For the first time since that winter night, Wren felt something shift. Not fear, not hope. Something steadier. The sense that adults were finally paying attention. The second morning felt heavier than the first. Outside the courthouse, cameras clustered like winter birds, quiet but alert. Headlines refreshed every few minutes, each version slightly sharper than the last. Graham moved through them without comment, Serena Pike at his side, her calm presence acting like a shield. Inside, the air was different. Thicker, as if every word would be weighed before it was allowed to fall. Wren sat with her guardian, a soft blanket folded across her lap. She didn't fidget. She watched. She had learned that adults listened more carefully when children stayed still. Judge Hart adjusted her glasses. We will continue with clarifying testimony, she said. This court reminds all parties our priority is the child's welfare. Serena stood. Your Honor, we submit phone records showing Mr. Vale contacted a community assistance line before any overnight arrangements were made. She placed the documents gently on the bench. No secrecy, no avoidance. The judge reviewed them carefully. Across the aisle, Tessa shifted in her seat. Her eyes moved from the papers to Wren, then away again. Guilt didn't announce itself loudly. It crept in quietly, filling spaces where certainty used to be. Caleb leaned forward. He still took her, he said, unable to stop himself. Without permission. Judge Hart raised one hand. Mr. Rourke, you will wait to be addressed. Serena spoke again. Mr. Vale did not remove the child from her home. He responded to a minor already alone late at night, sought guidance, and followed instructions given. Judge Hart nodded slowly. She turned to Graham. Mr. Vale, at any point did you prevent Wren from contacting her family? No, Graham replied evenly. She knew where she was at all times. She was told what would happen next. The judge turned to Wren. Is that accurate? Wren nodded. He told me everything she said. He didn't rush. That sentence lingered. Because rushing was often how mistakes were made, Judge Hart closed her folder. We will recess briefly, she said. When we return, we will address temporary placement. As people stood, Graham finally exhaled. Kindness had entered the room. Now it had to survive scrutiny. When the court resumed, Judge Hart leaned forward slightly, her voice softening. Wren, she said, I'm going to ask you a few questions. You only need to answer what you're comfortable with. Wren nodded once. Can you tell us about your evenings at home? The judge asked. Wren thought for a moment. She didn't look at her mother. She didn't look at Caleb. She stared at the edge of the table, tracing it with her eyes. Evenings are busy, she said. The baby cries a lot. Mom gets tired. The judge waited. I try to help, Wren continued. If I'm quiet, it helps. Serena didn't interrupt. Neither did the opposing counsel. This wasn't testimony meant to corner anyone. It was context. Do you feel safe at night? Judge Hart asked carefully. Wren hesitated. Not because she was afraid to answer, but because she wanted to answer correctly. I feel smaller, she said finally. The word landed gently and painfully all at once. Judge Hart nodded, absorbing it. And at the park that night, Wren looked up. It was cold, but it was quiet. I didn't want to bother anyone. Across the room, Tessa closed her eyes. Graham stayed still. He knew this moment wasn't about him. What made you approach Mr. Vale? The judge asked. The cake, Wren said simply. And the candle. Nobody lights candles if it doesn't matter. A ripple moved through the courtroom. And did Mr. Vale ever tell you to come with him? The judge pressed. No, Wren said firmly. He asked if I wanted soup. Judge Hart's lips pressed together in thought. You're very clear, she said. Thank you. Caleb shifted again. Kids don't understand, he muttered. Judge Hart turned toward him, her gaze steady. On the contrary, she said, children often understand more than we give them credit for. Wren returned to her seat, hands folded again. She hadn't accused anyone. She hadn't raised her voice. She had simply told the truth, and the truth was doing something powerful. By the third session, the courtroom felt transformed. Not louder, not dramatic, more focused. Serena called a school counselor to the stand, not to expose, but to explain patterns. Wren is attentive, the counselor said. Kind, often tired. She apologizes when she hasn't done anything wrong. Judge Hart took notes. A pediatric nurse followed, speaking carefully. We recommended routine support, she said. Nothing urgent, but consistency would help. No accusations, no graphic details, just quiet concern stacking into something undeniable. When Tessa was asked to speak, her voice trembled not with anger, but realization. I didn't see how quiet she had become, she admitted. I thought quiet meant okay. Judge Hart listened. Quiet often means adapting, she said gently. Children adapt until they disappear. That sentence stilled the room. Caleb was last. His answers were short, defensive. He spoke of rules, structure, expectations. He didn't speak of warmth. Judge Hart closed her folder slowly. This court does not see villains today, she said. It sees adults under pressure and a child navigating silence. She looked directly at Graham. Mr. Vale, your actions followed guidance and law. Then to Tessa. Ms. Harper, your love for your child is not in question, but love requires presence. Finally, she looked at Wren. You have been very brave, Judge Hart said. But bravery should not be required to feel safe. The judge paused. I am ordering temporary custodial guardianship under supervision, she continued, with continued services and a clear path forward for all parties. Wren blinked. Graham's breath caught not in victory, but responsibility. The gavel struck softly, and in that sound, the balance shifted not toward power, but toward protection. The courtroom felt smaller than before, not because more people had arrived, but because fewer illusions remained. The kind that once filled space assumptions, defenses, convenient misunderstandings had thinned. What was left was quieter, sharper. Judge Eliana Hart folded her hands. We will now address the child's long-term sense of safety, she said. This is not a question of blame. It is a question of environment. Wren sat straight in her chair, shoulders squared the way children do when they sense something important is coming. She wasn't afraid. She was alert. Serena Pike stood her tone respectful. Your Honor, we request permission for the court to hear directly from Wren with support present. Judge Hart nodded. Granted. The guardian leaned slightly toward Wren. You can stop any time, she whispered. Wren took a breath. Not a shaky one, a steady one. At home, Wren began. Everyone is tired. That's not bad. But when people are tired all the time, they don't see you. The room listened. I try to help so nobody gets upset. She continued. I put toys away. I watch the baby. I stay quiet. Quiet makes things easier. Judge Hart didn't interrupt. But sometimes Wren said softly, when you're very quiet, people forget you're still there. Tessa's breath caught. She pressed her fingers together, eyes fixed on the table. Wren went on careful with her words, like she didn't want to hurt anyone. I didn't leave because I was angry. I left because I thought I was in the way. The sentence landed gently and stayed. Graham felt his chest tighten, but he didn't look at her. This moment belonged to Wren. Judge Hart leaned forward. And how did you feel when you sat with Mr. Vale? Wren looked up. He listened, she said. He waited. He told me what would happen next. A pause. I didn't feel invisible. No accusation followed. No dramatic plea. Just that. Caleb shifted in his seat. Kids exaggerate feelings, he muttered under his breath. Judge Hart's gaze moved to him, calm, unmoved. Feelings are data, she said, especially when they are consistent. The courtroom fell still again. Wren finished, her voice quieter now. I don't need things. I just want to know where I belong. When she sat back, no one rushed to speak. Silence had finally said enough. Judge Hart allowed a brief pause before continuing. Ms. Harper, she said gently, turning to Tessa. You may speak if you wish. Tessa stood slowly. Her hands trembled not from fear of punishment, but from the realization that something precious had almost slipped past her unnoticed. I love my daughter, Tessa said. I thought providing was enough. Food, a roof, rules. Her voice cracked just slightly. I didn't realize how quiet she had become. She looked at Wren, really looked as if seeing her daughter for the first time in a long while. I thought quiet meant she was okay. Judge Hart nodded. Many parents do. Serena spoke carefully. Love is not in question here. Capacity is, Caleb stood abruptly. This is being twisted, he said. Kids need discipline, structure. You can't let feelings run a house. Judge Hart raised a hand. Sit down, Mr. Rourke. He hesitated, then did. Structure without warmth, the judge said evenly, does not create safety. It creates compliance. That word echoed, compliance. Wren's small hands folded tighter in her lap. Graham noticed and felt the urge to move to protect, but he stayed still. Protection now meant trusting the process. Serena approached the bench with a single page. Your Honor, we are not requesting permanent removal. We are requesting stability, time, supervised care, and support. Judge Hart reviewed the document. This plan includes family services, she said. Counseling, parenting support, school coordination. She looked at Tessa again. This is not punishment. It is opportunity. Tessa nodded slowly, tears finally slipping free. I want to do better, she whispered. I didn't know how. Judge Hart turned to Graham. Mr. Vale, she said, temporary guardianship is not symbolic. It requires patience, transparency, and collaboration. Graham stood. I understand, he said. And I accept. His voice didn't carry triumph. It carried commitment. Judge Hart exhaled. This court finds that the child's immediate emotional well-being is best supported through a supervised, stable environment. She paused, then added, children do not need perfect adults. They need present ones. The weight of that truth settled on everyone in the room. When the gavel struck, it didn't sound final. It sounded careful. Temporary custodial guardianship is granted, Judge Hart said, with continued oversight and services for reunification if appropriate. Wren blinked. Once. Twice. She didn't smile. Not yet. Graham moved only when the guardian nodded. He knelt in front of Wren so they were eye level. You don't have to decide anything right now, he said softly. We'll go step by step. Wren searched his face. Adults often said things they didn't mean, but his voice didn't rush. It didn't promise too much. Okay, she said. Outside the courthouse, snow had begun falling again, slow, steady, patient. Not storm snow, healing snow. Reporters called out questions. Graham didn't answer. He placed his coat gently around Wren's shoulders and walked with her toward the waiting car, supervised and documented exactly as planned. Inside the car, Wren stared out the window. Is it bad that I feel lighter? She asked. No, Graham replied. It means you were carrying too much. That evening back at the house, the lights were soft. The guest room waited clean, warm, unchanged. The moon nightlight glowed quietly. Wren stood in the doorway. Is this still okay? She asked. It's okay, Graham said. And it's allowed. She climbed onto the bed, slowly testing the softness like it might vanish. She pulled the blanket up and let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Mr. Vale? She asked. Yes. You didn't save me, she said thoughtfully. Graham tilted his head. No, you just noticed, Wren replied. That feels different. He smiled, then small real. It is different. Downstairs, Graham stood alone for a moment, staring at the quiet house. For the first time in years, it didn't feel like a monument to loss. It felt like a place where something careful and new was learning how to exist. And that night, as snow continued to fall over Bench 7, the rescue that mattered most had already happened. Not loud, not heroic, just human. The first week wasn't dramatic. That was the strange part. No shouting, no slammed doors, no urgent alarms, just quiet, the kind that didn't feel like abandonment, more like space finally being offered. In Graham Vale's home, mornings arrived with soft light and predictable sounds. A kettle heating a toaster, clicking the low hum of a house that didn't demand anything from a child to earn its peace. Wren woke up early anyway. Habit had built an invisible clock inside her. She slipped out of bed, feet silent on the hallway runner, and paused at the top of the stairs, as if waiting for someone to tell her she was doing something wrong. Graham was already in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, making pancakes with careful focus, like he was practicing being a different kind of adult. Good morning, he said, without turning too fast, so he wouldn't startle her. You slept a long time. Wren blinked. Is that bad? It's normal, he said gently. Or it should be. She hovered by the doorway, hands tucked into her sleeves. The moon nightlight from her room had made her brave enough to step out, but not brave enough to assume she belonged. Graham slid a plate onto the counter and waited. He didn't call her over like a command. He didn't wave her forward like a performance. He simply created a place and let her decide. Wren took one step, then another. The pancakes smelled like warmth and safety, two things that sounded similar but felt completely different. Safety didn't rush you. Safety didn't test you. Graham poured orange juice, then paused. Do you like blueberries? Wren studied him, suspicious of how simple the question was. I don't know. That's okay, he said, like that was the most acceptable answer in the world. A knock came at the door mid-morning. Not loud, not sudden, just official. A caseworker arrived, professional kind, clipboard held like a tool, not a weapon. She explained the schedule: home check-ins, school coordination, counseling referrals, supervised visits for Tessa if approved, and clear boundaries around Caleb's contact restrictions. Graham listened, nodding, asking the right questions. Wren watched from the hallway, half hidden, learning something new, that protection could look like paperwork, and that being cared for could involve systems, not secrets. Later, Graham walked Wren to a small school office where a counselor greeted her with a calm smile. No spotlight, no awkward announcements, just a quiet introduction and a promise of support. In the car on the way home, Wren stared out at the snowy sidewalks. Do I have to be perfect here? She asked suddenly. Graham gripped the wheel a little tighter, not from anger, but because the question revealed how much she'd been carrying. No, he said. You get to be a kid. Wren's lips parted like she didn't understand the sentence. You can make mistakes, he continued. You can ask questions. You can be loud sometimes. You can take up space. Wren sat very still, as if her body didn't trust those words yet. That night, Graham found her at the hallway photo wall again. She stood in front of a framed picture of Poppy, bright-eyed mid-laugh, her grin crooked with joy. Wren didn't touch the frame. She just looked. She was happy, Wren said quietly. She was, Graham replied. Wren hesitated, then asked the question carefully, like it might break something. Do you want me to be like her? Graham crouched so he was at her level. His voice stayed steady. No. I want you to be you. Wren exhaled. It wasn't a sob. It wasn't a dramatic release, just a small, invisible letting go. Later, as Graham tucked her in, Wren whispered into the dark, If I disappear again. Graham didn't let her finish. You won't, he said gently. Not here. Not with me. Not with the people helping us. Wren stared at the moon nightlight until her eyes finally closed and the house, patient quiet, learned her name again. The supervised visit took place in a bright community room that smelled like lemon cleanser and crayons. It wasn't cozy. It wasn't cinematic. It was safe, which mattered more. Wren arrived with her guardian and caseworker. Graham didn't come into the room by plan, by policy, by respect. He waited nearby, letting the process stay clean and child-centered. Tessa Harper was already there, sitting on the edge of a chair, like she didn't deserve the whole seat. Her hair was pulled back too tightly, as if she'd tried to look together without realizing how much her hands were shaking. When Wren stepped in, Tessa stood too quickly, then stopped herself. She had been told not to overwhelm, not to flood the moment with emotion that would make the child responsible for an adult's pain. So she breathed slowly and said, Hi, sweetheart. Wren didn't run, but she didn't hide either. She walked closer and sat across from her mom at a small table, a box of colored pencils between them, like a bridge neither knew how to cross. Tessa's eyes filled, but she blinked hard and looked at the pencils. They said you liked to draw. Wren nodded once. What do you like to draw? Tessa asked. Wren hesitated, then pulled out a blue pencil and began sketching a bench and a streetlight. She didn't explain it. She didn't have to. Tessa watched the drawing appear line by line, her expression shifting, as if she recognized something she'd never truly seen before, her daughter's inner world. I'm sorry, Tessa said softly. Not loudly, not theatrically. just like a person saying the truth without expecting immediate forgiveness. Ren kept drawing. After a moment, she said, "I didn't leave to hurt you." Tessa pressed a hand over her mouth. She nodded. "I know." Ren finally looked up. Her eyes were clear, not accusing, not dramatic. Just honest. "I didn't know how to ask for things," Ren said. "So I stopped asking." Tessa's shoulders sagged like a weight finally dropped onto the floor where it belonged. "That shouldn't have happened," she whispered. The caseworker gently guided the conversation toward structure, a plan for support services, scheduled visits, and steps Tessa could take to rebuild stability. Tessa agreed quickly. Too quickly, almost desperate. Ren noticed. "You don't have to say yes to everything," Ren said quietly. Tessa blinked. What Ren shrugged small. People say yes fast when they're scared. The room went still. Not because it was scary, because it was true. Tessa inhaled, then steadied her voice. "Okay," she said. "Then I'm going to say this slowly. I want to learn how to be better. I'm going to do the work. And I'm going to show you, not just tell you." Ren's pencil paused. The promise didn't solve everything. Promises never did. But something about the words, "show you," landed differently. Near the end of the visit, Tessa reached into her bag and pulled out something small, a folded piece of paper. "It's not a big thing," she said quickly, almost embarrassed. "I just wrote down your favorite things, from what I remember. And I want you to correct it, so I can actually know you again." Ren stared at it. No one had ever asked her to correct an adult in a safe way. She took the paper carefully and opened it. Her lips twitched almost a smile. "You got some wrong," she said. Tessa let out a shaky laugh that sounded like relief and grief holding hands. "Good," she whispered. "Tell me." When the visit ended, Ren walked out with her guardian paper in hand. Graham stood up from where he'd been waiting. He didn't ask for details right away. He just said, "How do you feel?" Ren thought for a long moment. "Not fixed," she said honestly. Graham nodded. "That's okay." Ren looked down at her mom's note again. "But maybe not invisible," she added. And that was enough for today. Healing never happens in a straight line. Sometimes it happens in public when you least want an audience. It started with a whisper online, a recycled headline, a clipped quote, a blurry photo from courthouse steps. Someone posted it like entertainment, like a story that belonged to everyone. Billionaire takes in little girl. What's the real reason? Graham saw it late at night after Ren had fallen asleep. He didn't show her. He didn't panic. He forwarded it to Serena Pike and the caseworker, then did what responsible adults do when the world gets noisy. He tightened the boundaries and made sure the child never had to carry the weight of strangers' opinions. The next day, when Ren came home from school, she seemed quieter. Not broken, just thoughtful. Graham noticed immediately. He set down his phone and lowered himself to her level. "Your face is doing that thing," he said gently. "What thing?" Ren asked. "The thing where you're holding a question so tight it can't breathe." Ren stared at the carpet for a second, then whispered, "Someone at school said I got picked because you're rich." Graham didn't react with anger. Anger would make this about him. Instead, he took a slow breath. "How did that make you feel?" Ren shrugged, but her shoulders lifted. "Like, I'm a prize or a problem." Graham's throat tightened. He chose his words like stepping stones across thin ice. "You are neither," he said. "You are a kid who deserves safety. The adults are doing paperwork and plans because that's what protects you, not because you're a prize." Ren blinked. "But why do people talk like that?" "Because they don't know the full story," he said. "And sometimes people fill empty space with guesses." Ren's eyes flicked toward the hallway photo wall again. "Do they guess about Poppy too?" Graham's chest ached, sharp and familiar. He nodded once. Sometimes. Wren was quiet. Then she asked, "Is it my fault you miss her?" Graham's heart lurched. "No," he said firmly but softly. "Missing her is love, and loving you doesn't replace her. It expands my life again." Wren seemed to hold that sentence in her mouth, turning it over like a piece of candy she didn't trust to be real. That weekend they returned to Harbor Light Park, but not to perform healing, not for drama. Just to breathe. Bench 7 sat under a pale winter sun. The snow had been cleared, leaving a clean path. Graham brought 2 paper cups of hot chocolate and a small cupcake, no spectacle. Wren sat feet swinging and stared at the bench like it was a doorway between who she had been and who she was becoming. "I used to think this bench was where sad people went," she said. Graham smiled faintly. It was. Wren looked at him. "Now what is it?" Graham glanced up at the streetlight, then back at her. "A place where someone noticed you." Wren nodded slowly. Then she pulled her crayon drawing from her backpack, the bench, the candle, 2 figures. She handed it to him like it was a contract written in color. "I want to keep it," Graham said, voice rough. Wren hesitated, then asked the biggest question, like it was small: "If people keep talking, will you send me away to make it quiet?" Graham didn't answer quickly. He wanted her to feel the truth, not just hear it. He placed the drawing carefully in his coat pocket over his heart. "No," he said. "I won't trade you for quiet. I'll build quiet around you." Wren's eyes shined, but she didn't cry. She leaned forward and set the cupcake between them. Then she said softly, "Can we light the candle sometimes? Not for the internet, just for us." Graham nodded, and in that small, steady agreement, the world's noise lost its power, because their story was no longer something that happened to them. It was something they chose together. The paperwork arrived quietly. No envelopes stamped with drama, no raised voices, just a thin folder placed on Graham's kitchen counter by the caseworker, edges neat, language precise. Temporary guardianship extension, continued services, clear boundaries, clear expectations. Wren stood on the other side of the counter, rocking gently on her heels. "Is this the part where everything changes again?" she asked. Graham considered the question carefully. "It's the part where things stay steady," he said, "because we write them down." Wren watched him sign. His name flowed easily across the page, confident, practiced. When he finished, he slid the pen toward her. "Do you want to try?" he asked. Her eyes widened. "I'm not on the paper. You're on every page," he replied. She picked up the pen awkwardly and wrote Wren Harper in careful, uneven letters on a blank corner. Not official, not required, but real. Later that afternoon, Tessa arrived for a scheduled check-in. She looked different, less rushed, more present. She knelt to Wren's height before speaking. "I brought something," Tessa said, holding out a small calendar. "I marked birthdays, school days, visits, so nothing gets forgotten." Wren studied it, then nodded once. "Okay." No promises were exchanged, no forgiveness demanded. Just structure, quiet, dependable. That night, Graham found Wren asleep on the couch, her drawing book open on her chest. He carried her to bed gently, the house dim and calm. On the nightstand sat the folder. On the page, his name. On the corner, hers. For the first time, the future looked written in ink, not snow. The bakery bell chimed softly. Wren stepped inside, eyes wide, taking in the glass cases lined with color and light. Graham didn't rush her. He let her choose with her eyes first. "That one," she said, finally pointing to a small strawberry cake with white frosting. "No candle yet." The baker smiled. Birthday Wren glanced at Graham. He nodded. "Yes," she said. "Mine." At home, the kitchen glowed warm and gold. Graham placed the cake at the center of the table and set a single pink candle on top carefully, respectfully. He didn't light it right away. This part, he said, you get to lead. Wren climbed onto the chair, hands resting on the table. She stared at the candle, breath held like this moment might float away. Do I say something? She asked. You can, Graham said, or you can think it. She thought for a long second, then nodded. I know what I want. Graham lit the candle. The flame stood steady. Wren closed her eyes and blew. The light vanished, and something in her shoulders softened like a knot, finally loosening. I wished to stay, she admitted quietly, and to be loud sometimes. Graham smiled, eyes bright. Both are allowed. They shared the cake slowly. No rush, no cameras. Just two people at a table where silence felt safe. Outside, winter pressed against the windows. Inside, belonging took its time. Spring came gently to Harborlight Park. Bench 7 waited under new leaves, the lake no longer frozen, the air softer. Graham and Wren sat side by side, a small paper bag between them. Inside it, 2 cupcakes, 1 pink candle, a small bundle of white flowers. For Poppy, Wren said softly, placing the flowers on the bench. Graham swallowed. Thank you. They sat for a moment, listening to the city breathe. Wren swung her legs. This is where you noticed me, she said. And where you noticed me, Graham replied. She smiled. Wren reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded drawing. 2 stick figures on a bench, a candle between them. Above it, written carefully, Dad plus Wren. She held it up, suddenly shy. Is that okay? Graham didn't answer with words. He pulled her into a hug, gentle, sure, present. It's the best name I've ever earned, he said. They lit the candle together this time. Wren watched the flame, calm and bright. Then she blew it out with a quiet laugh. As the light faded, the street lamp above flickered, unsteady, reliable. And in that soft glow, a little girl who once believed she had to disappear to survive, finally understood something true. Love is not loud. Safety is not rushed. And being remembered can change everything. Did this story move your soul? Share your feelings in the comments and rate it from 1 to 10. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, then tap the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Click the end screen to watch another heartfelt video. See you in the next story.